Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on 5 key steps for implementing a micro front-end platform on Kubernetes. And we hope that you're doing well. If you live here in America, we hope that you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and even though it looked different perhaps than in years past, but as we head towards summer, even around the globe, hopefully things will start to feel more and more normal, and so we're looking forward to that, and we're thankful for that. My name is Dale Chamberlain, and I'm part of the team here at Entando. And if it's your first time with us, a very special welcome to you. And we want to let you know that this webinar is the third in a bit of a series of webinars that we're doing about micro front ends on Kubernetes. So if you want to find those previous recordings to those other webinars, you can go on YouTube and you can search Entando, or you can search micro front ends on Kubernetes, and you should be able to pull those right up. And of course, once we're done with our time here today, we will send the recording of this webinar to you via email. And in just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Gabriele Ciaccasassi, who serves as Principal Project Manager at Entando, and he's going to give our presentation. But as we get going, if you have questions that are coming up, please feel free to drop those in the chat over on the right, and we will address those at some point today. And just thanks so much for being here. Gabriele, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah. Hi. Hello, everyone. Can you see me? Hello?
We can.
Yes.
We can see you.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, guys. So, thank you for taking some time and joining me here. I'm Gabriele. I'm one of the Entando project managers. I work in Rome, and I'm going to take you through this very quick journey talking about the basic points when thinking about implementing a project using micro frontends and Kubernetes. So, let me just share my screen and take my face out of it. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So as we were saying, we're going to talk about what you have to look out, how to implement a website using micro frontends and Kubernetes. And of course, we're going to use Entando for this. Before we start digging into that, let's take a step backward and talk a little bit about micro frontends. That I think is something that some of you are already familiar with, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. So this is something that probably most of you will recognize. This shows the journey, if you want, the path that many of us took a long time ago when we started working on software and on, well, also web application, of course. Ages ago, when we all started, applications were like the monolith you see on the left. Nowadays, the word monolith is quite trendy, but actually at the time there was no really other way to think about it. It was just a very big, complicated piece of software that encompassed all the functionality that you wanted. It was all very interconnected, and it was also very efficient if it was well designed. At a certain point, the idea of separating two main areas that are the front end and back end came up. This was because so people could actually focus on what we really want to focus on, because the front end has a very different challenge against the back end one. So even if the two things that work together, you don't really want to worry too much about what happens on the other side. And so the two things were separated. Actually, there were different kind of models here. There were 2 levels, 3 levels, even more if you want. But this gives you an idea. Recently, something called microservices came up. This is pretty much the situation where a big part of the industry is right now. It's something that relates to the backend part. It's a different architectural style. It's basically a way to deal with the complexity of the backend from a functional infrastructure and well, development perspective, and also from an organizational perspective. It addressed different challenges, like the fact that websites had to scale and perform, like the fact that you had to develop an application with a lot of functionality that could conflict one with the other if not dealt appropriately, and also with the fact that, of course, team could be great, and great teams are also great bug generators, as you can imagine. So the micro front-end was a kind of architectural style that let you develop in a way that was more maintainable, more testable. You decompose the backend in pieces that was loosely coupled. You could focus only on that piece. You could work on it and also deploy it independently from the rest. And you could organize both the business capability that you want to implement and the team according to that. What we are now looking at with Entando and with this new micro-frontends world is a sort of applying the same pattern to the front-end world. Also in the front-end world, you can have a very complicated and articulated interfaces. You can have a website that performs several different tasks, and you have the same challenge. If it is so big, you have a lot of people have to work on it, that people can actually bump into each other feet and are very difficult to manage. A lot of things. So what came up was let's try to apply the same decomposition also to the front-end world. Sorry. Lost control of the computer for a moment. Basically, if you think of a website, you can identify parts of it. For example, here we have an example layout that presents your interface with a notification part, that bell over there, so the usual thing that you receive notification and you want to show it. You may have a sign-in form, just a form, you put your data and you submit it, and then some other additional content. Complicated, easy, doesn't really matter. You can think about decomposing this page into 3 elements and have a team working on each one of it. Basically, what you want to do is create this sort of vertical that you see highlighted here that goes from end to end, from the front end down to the back end, and takes care of the complete functionality, takes full responsibility of the functionality, takes full ownership of the data, of the communication, on everything. It behaves independently. There are different ways to do this. It can be complicated at will. Sometimes you can have a database, sometimes not. It can talk to some external third party. It can be done in a way with a plethora of different languages. Here I highlighted React, Java, Angular because they are the ones that are JavaScript, sorry. Angular because they are the ones that are currently supported by Entando, but actually the sky could be the limit here in a way. What is the advantage of this? You go from the usual issues you had previously of having a huge and connected code base that you had to maintain, having a sometimes very complex delivery processes because you could have many different teams focusing on different functionality. They could work on different branches. They have to merge the code regularly, and then you have all kind of conflicts that to resolve, and then you have to test it. If it's all together, if you change something somewhere, you have to test the whole site against that small change. This could lead also to some kind of refactoring nightmare. If you have to redefine how you do a small piece, this could have consequences across the whole code base. So it could be very, very hard to do. And of course, performance scaling. Now, of course, and now there are very efficient ways to deal with performance scaling. Also, Kubernetes is a big help here. And you don't really need to use micro-frontends, but micro-frontends are the optimal companion, if you want, with Kubernetes, and you can actually use it to really leverage its powerful. Basically, you go from here to a situation like this. When you have decomposed your application in smaller pieces, you have small team working each on a different piece. They work independently. Probably you want to manage them together, so you're going to have a small management team working with them, but they will work on their own code base. They will implement the functionality without thinking on what happens, well, almost we'll see that later, without thinking what other groups are doing. They will merge the code only for what is in their code base, only for their small area. So this allows you to work better also for testing, because application part and you change something there, you don't have to worry what happens with the other parts of the website. Well, you have to worry that you don't break the whole website, but this is something that you should do anyway, and this goes under the concept of the web resiliency. So it's something that you actually have to think of when you work on micro frontend, but also on a website in general. And it's also easier to maintain, because if you work on these three things independently, you can deploy them independently. So you can release, go live with your website, and then after a while just update the login part, for example. So this gives you a lot of power and a lot of advantages, and it's something that also goes very much, agrees a lot with agile processes that now most of the industry is or should be implementing. So if there are not any questions about the micro frontend, I would like to move on and start talking about our use case. Okay, I take it as a no. So we wanted to use a real customer, but it presented a few challenges. So we decided to settle for a fictional customer. We imagined that a bank came to us asking us to implement a website and gave us this design. So it's pretty much what you can expect from a bank. There is a bunch of web pages that will show you some content that is not really doing something. There is navigation menu, there is usual kind of stuff. And then there is something that is more relevant for us. There is a dashboard where the user actually had to do some operations. So this is where our more interesting functionality are. In the dashboard, the user wants to see his balance. He may have 3 accounts, a checking account, a saving account, and a credit card, and he may want to see the balance for those. He may want to see the transactions, so both for the checking, for the saving, and the credit card. And also he wants to execute several operations like transferring money, paying bills, view documents that the bank will send you, statements, and of course the alerts. I also highlighted here the login and sign up bits in the menu because it is actually another functionality that agrees very much with the concept of micro frontend. It's something that you can model as a micro frontend, actually as a full vertical services that goes from the micro frontend to the microservice, like we will see. So I take advantage of this and start talking about the first thing you should look when you start working with, well, with any platform, but with Entando in particular, and it's about managing users. So we're talking about login and sign up. There are users that are logged in or not. You have to manage that. There are several ways you can do it. There are several applications out there you can integrate with. Entando chose to work with Keycloak. Keycloak is an open source identity and access management solution. It's been out there for a while. It's very complete. It has a lot of functionality. It works very well. It gives you pretty much everything that you need: authentication, authorization, session management via token, everything you can want. So we decided that this would be a part of the Entando 6 platform. We wanted this also because it relies on standard protocols. It gives you out of the box a lot of stuff. It gives you a single sign-on, gives you identity brokering, social login, user federation. Basically, this would give us out of the box a lot of power that otherwise we would have to reinvent. No need for it. This is open source, and Entando loves this kind of approach. This was the perfect companion for us. So it became a part of it. And it's something that you need to think as a first step when you think how to implement the design, when you think about the architecture of your software. The good thing is that Keycloak is very easy to use in Entando. It requires really small effort to be used. You literally just have to declare it in your code, and the system will give you the instance of Keycloak, and you just have to use it. Also, all the features we discussed are very easily configurable via web. There is in Entando, there is a panel that will let you configure Keycloak and everything. Also, the users and role are automatically created into Entando when you create it into Keycloak and vice versa. So it's very strictly connected. And finally, one thing that we really love is scalability and performance, because of course you can put Keycloak into its own pod and replicate it as much as you want. So access and identity management can be a very demanding task. And you may have seen how even big companies sometimes fail in managing all the traffic they can have. This is a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful tool to actually to get rid of it. So once you have this in place, you can actually move to start thinking about how to implement the design. So basically, let's go and see what is the decomposition microphone that we want to do here. You remember this slide? We said that there are several ways of doing it. I'm going to show you a few examples. They are fictional, and we made choices that are quite arbitrary. It's just to give you an idea of it. So let's start with the login and the sign up. As we said, this is a perfect candidate because it has a finite and closed functionality that goes end-to-end. It has a very distinct business value that can be also an important drive for you. Also, you can work on this, giving it exclusive ownership of its data. It's actually also quite good because in a world where GDPR is in place, you may want to deal with the personal data in a very closed environment, not spread information too much. Also, it can be developed autonomously. You can put a team working on it. Now, this could have been just a button that brings up a model, for example, with a form, and just submit the model and be done with it. But what you can actually do when designing micro frontend is doing something more complicated. You can do a whole flow of pages. You can, for example, think about the sign up. The sign up, you can think about it as a button that will open a page that could be inside the website you're working on, or could be on another website. For example, if your website is part of a big corporate portal, for example, the authentication, the whole authentication, sign up, sign in parts could be something managed externally. You can just give control, let's say, to that part, execute all operation you have to do, so put in your data, submit the data. You will receive an email. You, of course, click on the email, the usual thing. You click on the email, you activate the account. This is a whole user journey that you take that takes you some time out of the website. All of this functionality can be managed inside of this micro frontend. You will have different entry points, of course. You have to manage it, but it's something that is quite interesting to do. So we decided here to put the sign up, the login, and the forgot password journey all together in this micro frontend. So the things this piece of software has to do are a bit complex. So what we needed to do is provide it with a backend that could support all these operations. So we implemented also a backend that expose a set of microservices using REST APIs, and there is a database, of course, connected to these microservices because that's where the data is. We could have been more granular. We could have even have separated the databases. I mean, each microservices could have a database, its own database, be responsible only for that. This is actually a matter of, well, how you want to interpret the microservice architecture. No need to dwell into that. But so this one is a micro frontend that has a quite articulated relation with the backend. In the dashboard, we saw that we also have other elements that could be turned into micro frontends. Very easily, you can imagine that the summary card can be a micro frontend. It's just a place where the user is presented the balance and some other information possibly. Also, the transaction table is just a table where the user can see all the transaction. Actually, there is a little more functionality here. As you can see, there is a search, there is a filtering. So there is something nice here. There is also maybe a pagination, even if you cannot see it here. And then notification. So the notification could work, as I told you, like you click on the link and you're presented with you or your message, where you can see the one you've read, the one you've not read, the usual stuff. These are more simple, basically. It's just a very easy micro frontends that talk with the microservices that will probably have its own database, just that. Again, it's isolated, it's clean, it only serves one function, as you can see, but it serves fully, and it's fully responsible of what it's doing and of its data. The same thing for the check-in transaction. We imagine instead that for notification the situation is just slightly different. We imagine that all the notifications are not into the system, but are stored on some kind of external application, a third-party platform. So what we did here was to develop a micro frontend that would just talk to an API gateway and communicate with an external service connection. So as you can see, there are several ways of doing this. The important thing is that this was just arbitrary. There is not a single way on doing this. It depends on actually what you are pursuing. There are different drivers you have to take into consideration. For example, you could decide to go for your go-to-market strategy. You want to be very quick, as we said. So you want to go live with MVP, with something that gives you full functionality, maybe not all of it, or will give you every functionality you want. And then in time, you will start working on the single elements and improving them. Or you may decide that you need to focus on scaling. So your problem is the traffic, and you will decompose the application in micro frontends, focusing on how to make it scalable. So you will put in a micro frontend those functionality that needs to be hit hard, for example, and then you will replicate it at will. All the others, maybe you don't need to. Maybe it's a matter of data access or data integrity. Maybe it's the third-party integration. Or maybe it's just business value, because you have to respond to the business and they will expect to see a few things, and that is going to be the driver that you will use to drive this, of course. There is no, as I told you, a single way to do it. It's a matter of experience, it's a matter sometimes also of experimenting, but it's something that gives you a lot of power. So once you have decided how to decompose your website, you start to actually work on it. So you will put your teams in place, you will make them work, but you have to think about how those pieces are going to talk between each other, because micro frontends are like small macro application, if you want, but they have to come together as the whole big application you need to work on. There is no reason to do this if you cannot make the two things talk to each other. So let's talk a bit about communication. It's quite straightforward, to be honest. Let's have an example here. Something I didn't tell you. One of the requirements for this dashboard was that when I click on the summary card check-in, I see the check-in transaction. When I click on savings, I actually see the saving transaction. When I click on the credit card, I see the credit card transaction. So it's very easy if you think about it. It's just giving the check-in transaction, hello, I am checking, I am saving. So show me. How are you going to do that? As we said, every micro frontend has full responsibility of its data and also full ownership of its functionality. So the check-in transaction will not go and look on the data from the check-in micro frontend or the saving micro frontend. What's happening here is that we will use a very simple way, something that's been out there for a while, and it's custom events to commit with each other. So very easily, the summary card will just fire up a custom event with some relevant payloads. The check-in transaction or anyone else in the system that is interested will listen to this event and react accordingly. So it's very easy. very neat, not necessarily very new. Of course, one important thing is that this makes this web application only compatible with the browser that support this. But this is a given. If you're working with microfrontends, if you're working for Entando, that's something you have to do anyway. So again, this is quite easy. This relies on standard software components, something that is very well known. Entando actually gives you the infrastructure to make this work quite easily. Another important thing then, another point you really want to consider here is reuse of the microfrontends. So reusing software components is now, again, nothing new. It's something that you probably have done, you wanted to do since ages. You probably still do it. I mean, I did it ages ago when I programmed just copying and pasting code. This is, of course, something more interesting. So you can see here that the checking, saving, and credit card summary cards are mostly the same thing, basically. What changes here is the value they're showing, so probably the database they're connecting to or the table. What is the labels? We may want to change also the font, the colors. There is a menu there you can bring up, and so you may want to change the action view there. So, but they're basically the same thing. Entando gives the opportunity of reusing these microfrontends, just changing a little bit of configuration. If we look at the summary cards, we can identify several elements that can be configurable. The icon, the font, the label, basically. The balance is actually, of course, the database you are reading from, or anyway, it's the value that is stored somewhere in a different database. To be able to do this, all you have to do is add a little piece of code to your microfrontend to basically bring up a configuration panel that will be embedded in the Entando system. The one you see here is exactly that for one of the widgets, as you can see. So you can decide which icon, the string, the title, and the number of items, if it makes sense to show, and it will just be shown. So again, very easily done, and it will let you reuse the component across all the website. Finally, there is one last point that I want to touch, that is about language independence. So this is something that Entando does in a very efficient way. Something I didn't tell you is that with Entando you can work with your microfrontends and use Angular for one, React for another one, Vue for another one. Really makes no difference at all. The things will work together smoothly, and they also will keep talking to each other because they, of course, implement just the custom event element. So not really something difficult, but it gives you a lot of advantage. So for some reason you may decide that one particular microfrontend is best done with one specific language, or maybe it's just a matter of using your teams, your skill sets. Maybe you want to create something new, but you don't. Maybe you're working React. You want now to migrate to Angular, and you don't have the skill set, so you can keep working on React, taking one microfrontend at a time and start migrating it into an Angular implementation. And at the same time, training your team, and then one by one you can do it. Of course, the other advantage I mentioned now is the migration for the microfrontend. It's something we already discussed, so you can migrate your parts one after the other in any kind of fashion. So these are the 5 things that are the foundation of your work. Then, of course, there is a lot of development work, so your team will have a lot of stuff to do. But there is one last point I want to touch. If you want, we talk about 5 points. Let's say this is a bonus point. It's the Entando component repository. So we already discussed about the code we use. This is something that brings the whole thing to a different level. Basically, you can work with Entando and implement somehow the same flow you would do with a design system. Basically, if you start working on with a company that has a lot of different websites, a lot of different applications, and they need to have the consistency across UX, for example, or across or simply across UI. But what you can do is create on this work on these micro frontends, treating them as a micro component that as a whole can be packaged into a bundle and stored somewhere into Entando and then deployed not only on the same website as you did before, but across any other application, website, mobile application, whatever it is of the company. So you can create the login micro frontend done with a specific UX, specific UI, a specific flow, and do it once, have it everywhere. And then you can update it. You update it once, and you can decide if you want to roll it over across all the websites, or you just want to keep it on one specific mobile app and then gradually releasing on the other ones. But it's something that is very powerful because into a bundle you can put basically everything. You can put pages, you can put paid modules, content type, widgets, plugin, fragments. You can basically put the full micro frontend, the full microservice actually, the full experience into this bundle and deploy it together on the system. So you will end up with something like this, a library of bundles that you can navigate, you can filter, you can see all the details that you can take, look, install on your websites and reuse, upgrade, and everything. Okay, this is all, guys. This is everything I wanted to show you. So, are there any questions?
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can put those in the chat, and we can certainly address those. And yeah, thank you so much, Gabriele. That was a super helpful presentation. And for everybody who's watching, we'll be sure to send you the recording of this webinar along with the slide presentation just for your reference. And if you have any further questions about Entando's platform, about the Entando component repository, about our services, or how we might be able to help you or your organization, we'd love to connect with you. So you can shoot us an email, or you can also connect with us on our website as well as on our social media channels. So thank you so much again for being here, and we will see you again next time.